Tonight, you're going to heat something up. Maybe it's leftovers. Maybe it's a pot of rice. You'll press a button, wait a few minutes, and eat. You won't think about it at all. But the real answer to how this habit began is far stranger than a stove or a microwave. It starts over 1 million years ago, in the dark, with a species that wasn't even fully human yet. Your ancestors didn't invent cooking the way you'd expect. There was no light bulb moment, no single genius who rubbed 2 sticks together and shouted eureka. It was slower than that, messier than that, and far more consequential than most people realize. Picture a landscape scorched by a wildfire. Lightning strikes a dry field. Flames rip through the grass. Animals flee. Some don't make it. And afterward, when the smoke clears, there's meat lying in the ash. Cooked meat. Nobody made it on purpose. Early hominins likely scavenged this. Charred antelope. Blackened roots still buried in warm soil. It probably tasted strange at first. But something about it was easier. Easier to chew. Easier to digest. Easier to get calories out of without spending hours grinding through raw fiber and tough muscle. This wasn't Homo sapiens yet. This was millions of years earlier, in a lineage that hadn't developed language, art, or complex tools. And yet, evidence suggests they were already benefiting from fire long before they controlled it. So when did control actually begin? That question has split. Archaeologists for decades, at a site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers found something odd. Burned bone, ash, buried 1 million years deep. Archaeologist Michael Chazen led the team that studied it. His conclusion was simple, but it changed everything. This fire wasn't near the cave. It was inside it. Why does that matter so much? Because a wildfire doesn't wander underground. It doesn't turn corners in the dark. Something carried it there. Geoarchaeologist Francesco Berna checked the ash under a microscope just to be sure. It hadn't washed in with rain. It hadn't blown in with wind. It had burned exactly where it sat. That's not quite a campfire, but it's close enough to change the timeline of human history. Still, for a long time, that fire wasn't reliable. It came and went. It had to be captured from natural sources and kept alive, the way you'd guard a fragile flame in the wind. True fire starting, actually creating it from scratch with friction or sparks, likely came much later. So picture the gap, hundreds of thousands of years, where fire existed in human life, but wasn't yet a daily tool, a resource to be found, not made. Once it was tamed, though, everything shifted. The simplest method was the most obvious one. Meat held over flame on a stick. Fish laid directly onto hot coals. No pots, no containers, just heat and patience. But cooking got smarter fast. Dig a pit, line it with hot stones, wrap the food in leaves, bury it, and walk away. Hours later, dinner is ready, without anyone tending a single flame. This is earth oven cooking, and it never really disappeared. You can still find it today in Hawaiian emu pits, in New England clam bakes. Archaeologists trace it back thousands of years just by finding shattered stone cracked apart from being heated and cooled again and again. Before pottery, boiling seemed almost impossible. How do you boil water without a fireproof container? The answer was simple. Almost too simple. Heat stones until they glow. Drop them into water held inside a skin bag, a hollowed log, woven bark. The stone does all the work. No fire ever touches the container. This is stone boiling, and it unlocked something raw eating never could. Broths. Softened roots. Nutrients that used to be locked away. Then pottery arrived, and the game changed again. A container that could sit right in the fire. Stews. Simmered grains. Meals you could walk away from and trust. It emerged in different corners of the world, at different times, invented separately by people who never met. And everywhere it landed, the diet transformed. And there's one more layer to this, one that's easy to miss. Cooking wasn't only about taste, it was about energy. Harvard biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham built an entire theory around this idea. He calls it the cooking hypothesis. Cooked food delivers far more usable calories than raw food. Heat breaks down plant fiber. It unwinds proteins so your gut absorbs them faster. A chimpanzee chews raw food for hours a day just to survive. You don't. Cooking already did that work for you before the meal even reached your mouth. Wrangham's collaborator, biologist Rachel Carmody, put this to the test. Animals fed cooked meat gained more weight than animals fed the exact same meat raw, even when the raw meat was already pounded into paste. Cooking wasn't just softening food, it was pre-digesting it. Now picture what that meant for someone vulnerable. A child too young for tough meat, an elder with failing teeth, someone recovering from illness, too weak to chew for hours just to survive the day. For raw-eating primates, these individuals often don't make it. But a cooked meal is soft. It's fast. It asks almost nothing of a struggling body. Fire may have quietly saved the people who needed saving the most. Why does that matter so much? Because your brain is expensive. It burns roughly 20% of your entire resting energy. Despite being a small fraction of your body weight, an animal spending most of its day chewing raw food to survive doesn't have that kind of energy surplus to spare. But an animal that cooks does. Wrangham's theory suggests that cooked food may have freed up the caloric budget that allowed brain size to expand dramatically in human evolution. Smaller guts, smaller teeth, bigger brains. It's a controversial theory, and not every researcher agrees on the timeline. But the logic is hard to dismiss entirely. Fire didn't just feed your ancestors. It may have helped build the mind you're using to read this sentence right now. Think about what this actually required, biologically. Your gut is shorter than a chimpanzee's, relative to body size. Your teeth are smaller. Your jaw muscles are weaker. None of that works if you're still eating raw roots and tough sinew all day. It only works if something outside your body is doing part of the digesting for you. Fire became that something. In a sense, your ancestors outsourced digestion to the campfire, and their bodies changed to match. That's a strange thought, isn't it? Your softer jaw, your smaller stomach, your shorter intestines, these aren't just random traits. They may be a direct physical record of 1,000,000 years of cooked meals. Different environments push this technology in different directions too. In colder climates, cooking pits doubled as heat sources, keeping people alive through freezing nights, while slowly transforming tough roots into something edible. In coastal regions, early humans likely used hot stones and shallow pits to steam shellfish, a method that required almost no fuel compared to open flame. Inland hunting groups relied more on direct roasting, since meat was often the primary catch, and time was limited before scavengers arrived. None of these groups were talking to each other across continents. Yet remarkably similar solutions kept appearing, again and again, wherever humans settled. That's one of the quiet clues that this wasn't culture spreading from a single source. It was convergent invention. Different populations, facing the same basic problem, arriving at strikingly similar answers, because fire behaves the same way everywhere on Earth. There's also a detail people rarely consider. Cooking didn't just change what humans ate, it changed how they organized their day. Raw foraging animals eat almost constantly, snacking through daylight hours, because digestion demands it. But a cooked meal is dense. It's efficient. It frees up hours that used to be spent chewing. Some anthropologists argue those freed hours are exactly where early toolmaking, storytelling, and complex social behavior had room to grow. Time itself became a resource cooking helped unlock. Cooking did something else too. It gathered people. A fire at night isn't just warmth. It's light in the darkness, a reason to sit close together after the sun goes down. Some researchers argue this shared time around. The flame gave early humans more opportunity to talk, to teach, to bond, long before language became what it is today. The hearth may be one of the oldest social technologies humans ever built, and preservation mattered just as much as preparation. Smoking meat over a low fire, drying it in the sun, these methods let your ancestors store food for weeks instead of hours. That changed everything about survival. It meant a good hunt didn't have to be eaten in a single sitting. It could be stretched across a hard winter or carried on a long journey. So when you think about a campfire, don't just picture warmth and stories. Picture the exact mechanism that may have helped shape a bigger brain, a smaller gut, and closer relationships between the people huddled around it. None of this happened quickly. It stretched across more than 1,000,000 years, evolving in fragments, spreading unevenly across different regions and different species. There was no single inventor, just countless generations, testing, adjusting, passing down what worked. Consider how much had to happen before any of this became normal. Someone had to notice that scavenged, fire-touched meat was easier to eat. Someone had to figure out how to keep an ember alive across a rainstorm. Someone had to realize a hot rock dropped in water could make it boil without ever touching flame. Someone had to shape the first crude clay vessel and discover it could survive being set beside a fire instead of cracking apart. Each of those steps likely took generations to spread, tested and retested by people who had no idea they were building the foundation for a species-wide transformation. They weren't trying to change human evolution. They were just trying to eat something that didn't hurt to chew. And this is the part that's easy to forget when you picture cavemen around a fire, gnawing on a leg of meat. This wasn't a primitive detour on the way to real civilization. It was the foundation civilization was built on top of. Agriculture needed stored energy and settled populations that cooking helped make possible. Early trade networks moved smoked and dried foods across long distances. Shared meals around a hearth may have been humanity's first real social institution. Older than religion, older than written language, older than the wheel. And now here you are. You open the fridge, you turn a dial, you wait a few minutes, barely thinking about it. But somewhere behind that small, automatic act sits an entire chain of ancestors, huddled around unpredictable flame, discovering, almost by accident, that heat could unlock something raw food never could. Tonight, when you heat something up, you won't think about fire at all. But maybe you should.